I never thought I would say this, but I'm terrified on behalf of Colts fans. This is a legitimately good roster. There's a lot of quality players here and quality coaches. And yet the quarterback situation is so murky and, dare I say, dire, that it's tough for me to have any real expectations here. Is it going to be Daniel Jones starting in week 1, or is it going to be Anthony Richardson? And does it even matter? Because neither option is really that great to begin with. Those are the kind of questions we're answering today. But I also will inject some positivity with this. There is so much right about this roster that it might just maybe overpower the one big thing that is wrong with it and still get this team to the playoffs. Or at least that's what Colts fans are hoping for. If you're new here, this is day 19 of the annual Bootleg Summer Series, and in each one of these episodes we use film, analytics, salary cap breakdowns, and all manner of nitty-gritty football nerddom to answer the 3 questions that make up the central pillar of this series. What was this team's identity before? What is their identity now? And what does a successful 2025 season for this team actually look like? I cannot promise that all of today's show is going to be entirely positive, but I can guarantee that it will be entirely honest. So, Jay, Autumn, Anthony, roll the intro.
Stop me if you've heard this one before. This has to be the last season for Chris Ballard as the GM of the Indianapolis Colts, right? He's done a tremendous job assembling talent on this roster, but he has struggled mightily with the game's most important position. For years, the Colts brought in veterans at the end of their career, hoping they could catch lightning in a bottle, and they couldn't. Finally, 2023, they took their swing with Anthony Richardson, and that move, for the most part, has blown up in their face. So, this year, again, the Colts will roll out a retread, veteran cast-off, and hope that it all gels one more time. Brett, has Chris Ballard finally worn out his welcome in Indianapolis if the Colts can't win this year?
I have a lot of sympathy for him, honestly, and for Shane Steichen, because this team, on paper, doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. Like, it really doesn't. It's a good roster. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, this is a sport that, while it is a team game, is heavily influenced by who your quarterback is and your quarterback situation overall. And if you have a bottom tier quarterback, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what the rest of the team looks like, but you're probably not going to make the playoffs if you have a bottom tier quarterback situation, in which case you're probably going to get fired. So do I think that Ballard overall is a bottom tier GM? No. Do I think that Shane Steichen is a bottom tier coach? Absolutely not. But there is kind of an anchor, a potential anchor, I should say. It's not guaranteed to be an anchor. There is a potential anchor on this franchise that will make this team underachieve. And it brings me no pleasure to say that. Like, yeah, I'm a Texans fan. Yes, I'm biased for the Texans. But, like, I'm not saying anything that Colts fans don't acknowledge or agree with. Right? Like, Colts fans look at this roster up and down, all the talent on it, and they say, like, oh, man, we should be pretty good. And then you get to the quarterback spot, and you're like, maybe, right? So, like, they're nervous about it, and they should be nervous about it. And everybody else in the building should be nervous about it because, unfortunately, they just have that one potential massive weakness. And, we're recording this only a couple days into training camp, so it's not like they've really determined who the week 1 starter is going to be yet. But the fact that nobody's really taken it over this offseason so far and, like, clearly established themselves as, like, being the guy is kind of worrisome. And I can't remember the last time I saw a team with an undetermined quarterback situation, or rather an unsettled quarterback situation, 3 weeks from preseason, even less, that was probably going to be a playoff team. Like, it feels like they're still going to be in purgatory. And when you're in purgatory, you lose your job.
I would argue that good roster makes this situation even worse, because if they had a bad roster and a bad quarterback situation, they would be bad enough to draft at the top of the order and get their choice of the next signal caller. The problem is the roster's too good to let them lose to bad teams, so they're going to be somewhere between 7-10 and 10-7, and that is the middle. That is purgatory that we talk about, and it makes it much tougher to get that next quarterback if they choose to move on from Anthony Richardson. I said so far on purpose when I was talking about Anthony Richardson, because there is a slight possibility that it does work out, but so far the early returns from the first couple of years of his career have been high flashes and zero consistency, and it's very tough to win in the NFL with that. Not saying he doesn't hit his stride this year, and boy, wouldn't that be fun, because he has extremely high-level skills. But if he doesn't, there's no backup plan for this organization.
And I don't want to have this entire episode be doom and gloom, because we're not here to make Colts fans depressed. Although the Texans fans that follow this channel will probably enjoy that. Like, that's not the goal of this series. The goal of the series is not to say you have no hope. You should not look forward to this season. So again, it's not going to be all negative, but it is something that we just need to get out of the way so that we can then move on to all the positives that this franchise has going for it right now. So why don't we just start with the 2024 recap? We'll rip the Band-Aid off. We'll do our Anthony Richardson piece, and then we'll talk about all the fun stuff.
Yeah, and we'll go through it as quick as we can, Colts fans. We know that you know the overall record 8-9, which was good enough for second in this division, which is kind of nuts. 5-3 at home, 3-6 on the road, 3-2 over the last 5. If we look at that effectiveness summary, the power score summary, we look at how well a team runs the ball, passes the ball, defends the run, defends the pass, scores points, and of course keeps the opposition from scoring points as well. We take those 6 numbers, we just assign their league rank. We'll run through these pretty quick, Colts fans. Passing offense, 24th. Rushing offense, 16th. Middle of the pack. That was a decent number. Pass defense, 23rd. Rush defense, top 10 unit. It's the 10th best run defense in the NFL. Points scored, 17, right down the middle, even with all their offensive struggles. Again, not bad enough to be really bad. They were 17th. And points allowed, not a great scoring defense. They were 24th. Add all those numbers up, divide by 6. This is the 21st overall most powerful team. So 20 other teams in the NFL had a better power score than they did. That is the middle of the league, and you will have some up years and some down years, but the highs won't be super high. And again, the lows won't be low enough to really leverage the one position you need to change.
And the thing that I really want to hammer home here when we have this discussion is the fact that this team was still 17th in scoring despite the quarterback situation that they had last year, i.e. Anthony Richardson's inaccuracies, really is a testament to how strong the rest of the offensive roster is, especially after this offseason where they fixed the tight end position. At least we think they fixed the tight end position, bringing in Tyler Warren, because arguably the Colts had the worst tight end situation in the league last year. Yes, Colts fans, we acknowledge the issue. They needed a new tight end. I know a lot of Colts fans sitting at home are like, you have to bring up the fact that our tight ends didn't even turn around to look for the ball. Yes, I acknowledge that was part of it. But overall, if we're assigning blame here, it was really more about Anthony Richardson's inaccuracy. But even with that, again, we're talking about the 17th scoring offense in the league. That is how good the rest of this offensive roster is. And if you're looking at just the main issue with Richardson, it's the fact that he can't hit the receivers that he wants to hit. I don't even think decision-making was that bad. I don't even think that his pocket presence was that bad. It's just flat-out inaccuracy. And even beyond the atrocious completion percentage, he was at 48% raw completion percentage last year. That was 47th among all quarterbacks that have at least 100 dropbacks, right? That means you have to go through every single starter in the NFL plus like another half of the league to get down to Anthony Richardson. Those numbers didn't even really change when he was under pressure versus not under pressure. Like his clean, per Pro Football Focus, his clean pocket completion percentage was 52.8. Like that's awful. Like Jared Goff was like 79, 80% when he was not under pressure. So it's just about putting the ball on his receivers. And as I mentioned before, this team has good receivers. Like we love Josh Downs. We like Pittman. Alec Pierce, I think, is a good role player. And, you know, even if you're trying to assign blame for those incompletions between his receivers and Richardson himself. Those numbers are startlingly bad. And I'll directly compare him to Joe Burrow here, who is among the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. If you look at all of Joe Burrow's incompletions, again, all this data from Pro Football Focus. If you look at Joe Burrow's incompletions at short, intermediate, and 20-plus yards, so 1 to 9, 10 to 19, 20-plus, you can set your filters on PFF to, they have like an incompletion type filter. And it'll be like in front of receiver, behind receiver, over their head, short, bounce off a helmet. They also have things that are wide receiver's fault, right? Like either ran the wrong route or slipped out of his break or just dropped it. And so you could set all these filters to kind of establish like what percentage of incompletions are the quarterback's fault versus the receiver's fault. Joe Burrow, if you're looking at all those different depths of target, 23.3% of incompletions were Burrow's fault at short yardage or short depth, 28% at intermediate depth, and 38.5% at 20-plus yards. That's among the best in the NFL. Again, not completion percentage. We're talking about just looking at the incompletions, how much were the quarterback's fault. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson, 50% of his short incompletions were from him just flat out missing a receiver or bouncing it off a helmet or just completely misreading the field and throwing the wrong route and it going to nobody. 46.9% at intermediate depth and 44.4% at 20-plus yards. So, not every incompletion is the same. And if you're looking at Anthony Richardson's incompletions, not only does he have a lower completion percentage overall, but his rate of incompletions that are flat out his fault and not his receiver's fault is way higher than any quarterback that's even approaching the top of the league. In fact, this might hurt you a little bit, EJ. One of the only quarterbacks that was in Anthony Richardson's neighborhood in terms of incompletions that were his fault was Caleb. And, Caleb had some strengths to his game this past season, i.e. not throwing picks, but as far as like putting the ball on his receivers, he struggled mightily in that area. And unfortunately, the only other quarterback in the league that was similar, if not worse than Caleb in that area was Anthony Richardson. So if you just get more accurate, like that's all you got to do. If you just get more accurate passing from Anthony Richardson, the sky is the limit for this offense. They could legitimately be awesome. He just has to put the ball where he wants it, EJ. That's it.
It's got to be one of the most frustrating things in the league for Shane Steichen to design a play, have his quarterback roll out, see the correct target, and then just miss the broad side of the barn, because this is one of those where stats and film line up, I would say, perfectly. And it's not good perfectly, but if you tuned into Colts games, as Colts fans did every single week, whenever Anthony Richardson was starting, I kept an eye on the Colts because we were both really high on Anthony Richardson. And by the second quarter, you're covering your eyes, sort of peeking out between your fingers like, oh man, are you serious? Because his misses were terrible, and they were obviously terrible. And, Shane Steichen managed again to keep this will this offense to be the 17th best scoring offense in the league, even despite all that. And yes, Caleb had very similar results. I would say the reasons for those results are very different, and we'll play our favorite game. If you took Caleb and dropped him behind the Indianapolis offensive line with Shane Steichen as his play caller, how do you think it would affect those numbers?
They probably would have been better.
They would have been much, much better, because some of, not all of, Caleb's issues came from the fact that his protection was terrible and his play callers were, because there were 3 last year in Chicago, his play callers were calling plays that had receivers stacked on top of each other, running the wrong routes, stopping on routes, all that stuff. So his picture was incredibly muddy, where I would argue that AR's picture was pretty darn good. And again, you would see that on film. The play worked as designed. Everybody else doing their job, line protecting, receivers running their routes, even a nice play action fake. Then you've got this clean opportunity and you're like, come on, man, just hit it. And he airmails it. And you can see the frustration of everybody else, right? The other 10 guys out there who are just like, okay, like this is how we're going to do this. And it was, and they had to do it all season. And that's why they eventually made the change. And why they will have to make a change if he can't fix that issue. And it is mechanical, right? At this point, he needs to be more consistent mechanically because it's not a physical issue. Anthony Richardson's arm is tremendous. I would say top 10 in the league in terms of overall strength, but his accuracy is, as you said, like bottom 50. Like it's not great. And you can't have one without the other. It's like having a really fast wide receiver that has no idea what route to run. Yeah, he gets there in a hurry, but there is who knows where. And it's the same with Richardson. He's got a great arm. He can fire it in there, but there is this huge wide circle that's 3 times bigger than the wide receiver, and that's not how you keep an offense on schedule.
I probably should have added a little bit of extra context here as far as like quarterback's fault versus receiver's fault for incompletions. The largest percentage for most quarterbacks at the top end of the NFL is a defensive win, right? So it's like somebody making a play on the ball or something like 50% of your incompletions are supposed to just be from the defense being good, not from you being bad. So the fact that, again, you're looking at short yardage or short depth incompletions, Burrow was 23% his fault, 50% for Richardson. The fact that Richardson, like the largest percentage share of incompletions was him and not the defense tells you a lot. That's the picture I'm trying to paint here with that data is like, it's not supposed to be that way. It's really not. And unfortunately, the other side of that coin now is it's also an issue with the quarterback position, but for a totally different reason. Because I think Jones is way more accurate than him, but he's also one of the worst decision makers in the NFL among starting quarterbacks. And he's got terrible pocket presence historically. So, I feel like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face if you're starting him, because it's like, is it really going to be better? Like, okay, he'll hit his receivers in stride more often, but you can't guarantee the ball's going to go to the right receiver, and you can't guarantee that he's not going to get sack fumbled before he gets it out anyway, just from him running into pressure. So it just feels like there's no right answers here. And if you could fuse these two guys together, you would have a really good starting quarterback. It's just, that's not an option, unfortunately. So I don't know who's going to start week 1. I really don't. And I'm not sure there is an answer here that Colts fans would be super excited about. And so, if anything, they're just getting excited to watch Jonathan Taylor run the ball 30 times a game because that's probably their best recipe for success.
It's likely going to happen. I would imagine Daniel Jones does start week 1 and probably does what Daniel Jones always does, which is play his brand of, I'll say steady, and it's not good steady, but it is steady football for about a month before everybody goes, oh man, what are we leaving on the table by leaving Richardson on the bench? Is he healthy enough? We should give him a start. And then he comes out, and again, it'll be inconsistent in a different way, but the results will be the same. And that feels like the definition of insanity. It's like, which bad part do I want to insert into the machine to break? It doesn't really matter. They'll both break in different ways, but they'll both break. And I hope that's not the case. I hope that Shane Steichen can pull something out of Daniel Jones that we haven't seen yet in his long career. I hope that Anthony Richardson can turn a corner with accuracy, with mechanical accuracy, because again, you're right. He does get out on the edge of the play. He does identify the right place to throw the ball pretty often, and then he just can't hit it.
Again, I don't want to have this entire show be negative, so I will give you a little carrot here on the stick. If this offensive line is as good as I think it's going to be, because I mean, how many teams would kill to have this starting 5 between Bernhard Raimann, who's one of my favorite, young left tackles in the NFL. He is really, really good and really, really underrated. I don't know if he's gotten a contract extension yet, but if Dan Moore's getting $20 million a year, Bernhard Raimann should get a shitload more than that. You got Quentin Nelson still at left guard, Tanner Bortolini at center, who I think is going to end up being a pretty good player. He's a rookie last year. Matt Goncalves, who has played both tackle and guard during his football life going back to college. He ended up at right guard for them. I think he is also going to be a really good player going in the future. And then you still got Braden Smith at right tackle, who is not old yet either. Like, he's in the prime of his career. So this is a young-ish, for the most part, very talented offensive line. And your swing tackle is Jalen Travis, who they just took this year out of Iowa State, who I adored as a prospect. So like they've got some depth here as well. If this offensive line plays as well as I think it will, based on past results, it's very possible that Daniel Jones works just because he's not going to be under pressure as much as he was with the Giants. In which case, okay, now you're looking at a passing offense that could do some damage here. But I think that's probably the only way this works, is if this offensive line plays up to my personal expectations, because we know that it falls apart for DJ whenever he's under pressure, and they might just keep him clean enough so that we don't see the bad version of Daniel Jones nearly as much as we saw in New York.
And there are enough pieces all the way around, and we'll talk about all these pieces. Certainly when we get to the draft, we'll talk about plugging the tight end hole with Tyler Warren. The backs, obviously very good. The wide receiver core we like, even into the depth. There are a lot of pieces that can work together here and can be incredibly powerful. And on top of that, Shane Steichen is, I would call him a top half of the NFL play caller. And when those elements fuse together and work as the offense is called, yeah, there's a lot of power here. They could threaten for the division title and more. But it's not going to happen until they figure it out. And if they can keep the quarterback clean, that will absolutely help. It always helps. But they're going to have to find the answer. And, it could be in the building. It might not be. And again, it's going to be an interesting, no matter what happens at the quarterback position with the Colts, it's going to be an interesting journey.
And then on the defensive side of the ball, obviously you have a change at defensive coordinator, bringing in Lou Anarumo, very experienced. Historically, a very good defensive play caller as well. I think things went sideways for him in Cincy just because he got way too loyal to certain personnel and left them on the field for more games than they probably should have been on the field for. Like he was just slow on the hook for pulling guys that weren't performing, and I think that ultimately cost him his job in Cincy. But historically speaking, if you look back to some of those Bengals defenses under Lou, like he was really damn good at his job. And I think that the Colts did get an upgrade here at DC, and his personnel moves that obviously he signed off on for Ballard to do signal that I think he's going to do a lot of the same schematic stuff that he had recently been doing in Cincy. And if you guys are part of the Patreon and you see our companion infographics that we put out for every single team, there's one for the Colts as well. But if you go back to the Bengals infographic and you see a lot of the defensive stats that we put into that one, when you're separating out coverage percentages, especially by down and distance, and you're looking at the blitz rates by down and distance, a lot of the stuff that Lou is going to do in Indy, I think, is the stuff that he did last year in Cincy, which is blitzing a hell of a lot on first down, playing the run on the way to the quarterback, because it was him, Brian Flores, and Steve Spagnuolo were the only three DCs that had 40% or more of all of their fire zone calls be quarters fire zones. Like, they are on the cutting edge of how teams blitz. And similar to Flores, he blitzed a shitload on first down using these quarters fire zones. So you try to play the run on the way to the quarterback. You get TFLs where you can. You get into second and long. Then you're playing soft zone on second and long. That's kind of a departure from Flores. Flores will just keep blitzing, whereas Lou is like, all right, we're going to play a little bit soft and get to third and medium, third and long. And then in third down, he was exceptionally heavy on man coverage. Off the top of my head, I believe they were third in cover one in Cincy last year on third down. And so I look at the additions that they've made in this secondary this year, and you brought in Cam Bynum so that you can run a lot of the same quarters fire zones that Flores did, because Cam understands those coverage structures. And you bring in Charvarius Ward for third down, because we're going to play a lot of man coverage on third down. And I see the addition of Lou. I see the added personnel in the secondary, and it all makes sense. Like the coverages and the styles of blitzes they're going to run and the amount that they're going to blitz and when they're going to blitz, that all makes sense to me. And I'm a lot higher on this defense than most non-Colts fans are, because I see the vision and I see how these pieces fit together, and I'm pretty excited to see how they play.
I can't wait to see Lou Anarumo in Indianapolis. Indianapolis has been a little stale, I think is the best way to put it, in terms of defensive scheming for a while. You knew exactly what they were going to run if you listened to this series last year or the year before. Or the year before that. We said exactly the same thing. And this is going to be a fresh take. And Lou Anarumo was very good for a long time in Cincinnati. Yes, the wheels fell off at the end a little bit. And I'll tell you why I think that was. Lou puts a lot on his players, both from a mental standpoint and a physical performance standpoint. And when he had guys in Cincinnati that he could count on in all those roles, those defenses were killers. And there was talent bleed in Cincinnati. They didn't pay guys. Guys ended up leaving. He had younger replacements. And as the talent sort of drain came to that defense, he didn't adjust downward. He kept those expectations really high, and that's his prerogative as a coach. But the end result was they sort of hit the line of no return where all of the commensurate parts couldn't hold up the vision anymore and the boat sank. Well, he's coming into Indianapolis, and up front, he's got Kwity Paye. He's got Grover Stewart, who we like, Defoe, Latu, JT, who we'll talk about from the draft. Linebacker, he's got Zaire Franklin. You talked about Travarius Ward. Nick Cross is a really good young safety who I think he's going to like a lot and put a heavy load on, and I think Nick will be able to hold it up. Cam Bynum, of course, brings scheme and system familiarity. He can help teach everybody. Jalen Jones, underrated. We've sung Kenny Moore's praises before. He's got dudes in this defense. And as long as they can pick it up and guys like Cam Bynum can help them understand what he requires, if this defense starts clicking, it's got the guys to be a dominant defense. And that's going to be fun to see because it's been a while since you could say that about a Indianapolis defense, that they were dominant. They were good, they were solid, they were steady. You knew it was coming from them. But dominant, it's been a while. And this has the potential to be a dominant pairing.
One of the few things that he's really going to have to fix is how this D-line operates as far as a unit rushing the passer. Because at least in the past, especially last year, it was 4 guys all rushing individually, not necessarily rushing well as a unit. And you have individually really talented players, right? With Buckner, Latu. I love Grover. I think he's still consistently been one of the better noses in the NFL, especially on early downs. But when it comes to pass rush, like it was just kind of 4 guys next to each other, not 4 guys together. And that showed up statistically as well. Like this was a team that was, if you're looking at not just sacks, but cleanup sacks, i.e. somebody gets pressure and then somebody else cleans it up either through effort or just through the layering of the pass rush. Like typically you're always going to have one guy whose job is to just fuck shit up, for lack of a better way to phrase it, disrupt the quarterback, get him off his spot, and then whether it's a stunt or a blitz or something like that, like you're creating layers to a pass rush so one guy penetrates, gets the quarterback to move into the rest of the pass rush, and those are considered cleanup sacks. This team was 30th in cleanup sacks last year. They only had 8 the entire year. So when you also pair that with the fact that I believe they were 20th in terms of sacks on free runners, they only had 7. So this team wasn't scheming up free blitzes or free runners on blitzes, or they weren't scheming up ways for guys to win on stunts and come loose that way. They weren't getting cleanup sacks. Like it was just basically either you win individually or nobody wins, right? And I broke out all of their sack totals based on time to pressure or time to sack. And if you're looking at sacks under 2.5 seconds, which is typically going to be we're winning on a stunt and getting somebody free immediately, or we're winning on a blitz, or somebody really just kicks ass immediately and gets it by themselves. Sacks under 2.5 seconds or 2.5 seconds or less. They had the fewest in the NFL at only 13.5 the entire year. That is awful. In terms of between 2.5 to 3.5 seconds, that's kind of the sweet spot of we're winning individually, right? Latu's winning around the edge, or Buchter's winning up to, like, winning individually, getting into that sweet spot. They were 7th most. So when they did win, that's the time period that they won. And then you go 3.5 seconds or later, which is now we're getting into like effort sacks and running down the quarterback who escaped the first guy, and we flush him out, we track him down in space. They had the second fewest in the NFL again of 3.5 seconds or more at just 1 the entire year. So they didn't win early, they didn't win late. They were kind of a Goldilocks pass rush. Like, it had to be just right for them to get their wins. And even then, they were 7th most, not top 5, right? And that all, I think, contributed to why this pass rush felt like it was underperforming relative to all the investment they've had in this D-line over the years. You expected more from them, and that's because they were just a bunch of individuals out there. And I feel like Lou's main goal is to get them to rush as a unit, right? Create layers to this pass rush so that if somebody wins, it's not on them to finish it. It's on the unit to finish the job. Get guys free through blitzes, get guys free on stunts, and just get them playing together. Because if they can play together, like, all of those individual wins as pass rushers are still going to be there, right? Those 2.5 to 3.5 second sacks, they're still going to be there. But if you can also add in quick wins and also add in late wins, this pass rush could be top 10 in the NFL. It's not right now, but it could be. And I feel like Lou's number one job is to fix that.
Gotta have these guys playing late in the down. Having only 1 sack in the cleanup category is a nasty indictment of quitting on the pass rush, because, again, that puts you pretty much dead last in the NFL, and you have to play through the rush because it's not always going to go the way you want, like you said, in that Goldilocks rush where everything's perfect, and you have to be able to win late in the down. The early ones are great because you're just snuffing out the play before it ever gets a chance to start up, but those late ones are an indication of team rushes and hustle, and you got to have both. And if they do, again, they are not short on dudes. This pass rush room in general, I think, is going to be a sort of embarrassment of riches for Lou, because he's looking at, like, last year he had Trey Hendrickson, and
this year he might have Trey Hendrickson. Yeah. I don't know, man. They don't want to sign him.
Yeah, and
hold on. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but could we see the Colts reach out?
We could
and try to make a deal, because, like, if I'm Ballard, I'm like, well, fuck it, I might not be here next year anyway if things go south. Like, am I crazy for thinking that's an option?
No,
and just
I don't
reunite him with Lou?
I don't think you're crazy at all, and I think that would vault them into consideration for they damn well better be top 5 with all those horses, because, again, Lou is coming from a place where Trey was it for pass rush. He looked around his rush room last year and went, okay, if Trey doesn't win, who's going to win? Everybody kept their hands down. And he was like, oh, okay, I guess it's Trey or bust. He could look around and look at legitimately right now, without Trey, 5 guys that can win. That's got to feel really like a breath of fresh air to him, especially on the pass rush front. If they get Trey on top of that, that's the cherry on top of the sundae, and this pass rush should be dominating.
Well, why don't we get to the rest of the coaching staff and power structure here, because we've mentioned a lot of them by name, but there's a whole bunch of other really interesting coaches here too, and a few Colts legends to boot.
Yeah, Chris Ballard is the GM. We'll start with him. Very long and successful tenure in the NFL. Again, this roster doesn't get to this place without Chris Ballard building it, but his Achilles heel has been quarterback. We've already chronicled that. He's going to have to get over it, but he has built a very good roster in Indianapolis for quite a long time. Head coach Shane Steichen, one of the best young offensive play callers in the league, and again, if he can get quarterback stability, I think a lot more people are going to recognize that. The structures were there, the ability was there, the scoring was still there, even though he didn't have somebody as a signal caller he could count on. That's really impressive. Offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter is helping him out with that. Again, this is not Jim Bob Cooter's first rodeo, and he designed an offense that is effective, just needs to be executed. Lou Anarumo, we already spoke about, as probably one of the biggest additions for this team. whether you're talking about coaching your players throughout the entire offseason. Brian Mason is the special teams coordinator. As far as other notable coaches, and you're talking about Colts legends, Reggie Wayne is the wide receivers coach. And it's really cool to see very successful, and I do mean very successful, Hall of Fame type players go into coaching and really dive in, not just sort of make service on their name, but say, no, I want to help develop the next generation of players at my position. And Reggie Wayne's doing that. One of the reasons we've seen great performances from all the receivers in Indianapolis, but especially guys like Josh Downs. Alex Tanney is the passing game coordinator. Yes, the former Wisconsin quarterback, Alex Tanney. As far as defense and special teams goes, James Betcher is the linebackers coach. He was the Bengals linebackers coach for the last 3 years. So he's going to help the linebacker level of the defense help understand, just like Cam Bynum is going to be a bit of a coach on the field for the secondary level. In terms of who's in charge of coaching that secondary, Jerome Henderson is the defensive backs coach. And this is my rabbit hole stat that's just fun on Jerome Henderson. As a player, he was Mr. Northeast. He played for the Jets, the Bills, the Patriots twice, and the Eagles. He never left the region. He likes it.
So he just really hates the Dolphins, is what you're saying.
He just made himself a circle in the Northeast. And Cato June, another Colts legend, is the assistant linebackers coach, helping out James Betcher get these guys into Lou Anarumo system and understanding truly what he needs them to do for this complex but effective defense to really work.
I have spent more time this past month watching Cato June tape than I ever thought I would. Looking at those mid-2000s Colts defenses while I've been working on this Bob Sanders episode, which might actually be out by the time this show comes out, now that I think about it. But yeah, I saw that name on the coaching staff, and I was like, wait, like there can't be more than one Cato June on Earth. Like, is it the same one? And yeah, it is. As far as free agency and what Chris Ballard did this March to set themselves up to have, in my opinion, yet another really good draft class. How many years in a row are we going to say that before we actually see results? I don't know. But as far as what Ballard did in March to set up a really successful April, again, these are not every single transaction. If you want every single transaction, that's also going to be in our companion infographic on Patreon. I can't remember if I plugged that earlier, but if you want all of the data, at least most of the data that we referenced earlier for these Indianapolis Colts, as well as for Lou Anarumo's Cincinnati Bengals defense last year, if you go to our Patreon, either at the QR code on the screen or at the link in the description below, we have these like 18, 19 page infographics for every single team with all the data you could ever want, including every single offseason transaction. We're just going to have the notable ones here today, but if you want the full list, that's over on the Patreon. Julian Blackmon is no longer a Colt. I actually just saw he signed somewhere like yesterday. As of
Dolphins?
It was, hold on, Saints. So Julian Blackmon is a Saint now.
With Honey Badger's retirement, they signed Julian Blackmon.
Yeah, so you could probably figure out we're recording this on July 25th, just based on that last note. Dayo Odengbo just went to the Bears for $16 million a year. Sneaky signing for Chicago. I think Dayo's a good player. Joe Flacco is also now a Brown again. Kylan Granson is an Eagle. EJ Speed is a Texan. Ryan Kelly is a Viking, and so is it Freeze or Fries? I've seen it pronounced two different ways now, and I'm trying to understand if it's the German way or not.
No, I was corrected in the comment. They said it's like the food, it's fries. And I said, cool, okay. Thank you, because I too struggled with that pronunciation.
So Will Fries is also now a Viking. But again, this team is drafted well in the offensive line, so I think that ultimately they're going to be okay. They didn't need to spend $17.5 million on him because they've got young up-and-coming guys that I like a lot. As far as retentions, Braden Smith just did a revised one-year deal at $8 million. He has another $3 million available in incentives. So, if he plays well this season, who knows if he's going to be a long-term Colt or not. Again, they just took another guy in the draft in Jalen Travis, who I like a lot. So they do have an option waiting in the wings there. But either way, Braden Smith is at least going to be a Colt for this year. And in the past, I thought he's been a really good right tackle. Mo Alley Cox is back once again at 32 years young. And looking at third-party additions here, Charvarius Ward is obviously the big one, $18 million a year for a really, really good man cover corner. I understand he's 29. He's starting to get on the back end of his career as far as like DB ages go. They don't tend to play as long as, offensive and defensive linemen do. But Charvarius Ward, at least now, right now, in 2025, is still a really, really good cover corner. So I don't know how well his contract is going to age, but at least for now, I love it. Daniel Jones obviously brought in at $14 million a year to potentially be their week 1 starter, which even if I don't think he's a great starting quarterback, he's $14 million, so it's not awful financially. And then Cam Bynum, this was a great deal. $15 million a year for a very, very, very good safety. Also just an excellent locker room guy as well. Like he's going to be a true culture changer for them. I love that Cam Bynum signing. So again, the secondary additions, just chef's kiss, A+, 10 out of 10, no notes. And that set themselves up to have a really, really strong draft as well.
Yeah, once we got to the draft, I would say it was the worst, best kept secret in the NFL draft that Tyler Warren was eventually going to be a Colt. They make that happen. In the first round of pick number 14, the tight end out of Penn State, who is one of the most versatile players at his position to come out in years. He took a bunch of wildcat snaps for Penn State, diving over the line for touchdowns. They used him all over the formation, including in trick plays, and he is a big, tough, prototype football player. Not as fluid necessarily as some other sort of pass-first tight ends, but if you want him to do just about anything that a tight end needs to do, which again is one of the most versatile job descriptions on the football field, he can do it. I know there was some question about whether or not he was a true inline blocker. I thought he showed really good effort there, and he's got good size. I think he can get better technically. I don't think he's reached his ceiling there. And again, not necessarily the fastest mover, but he is long, tall, fast enough, very good in contested catch situations. I love Tyler Warren because of his versatility, and I think he's going to be a long-time starter for them. Again, a very worthy pick in the middle of this particular first round that was not heavy on high-end talent. It was a great match in terms of system, fit, need, and availability. I thought the Colts did well to get him in the first round.
I loved this pick. I did not expect it was ever going to happen because I didn't think he was going to be there. But, as far as what the Colts needed most, it was Tyler Warren. Like, not just as a player, but, again, if we're trying to build a culture of toughness and ruggedness and versatility and, everything you need to survive in a very tough and rugged AFC, like, it's Tyler Warren. Like, the fact that he can give whoever the starting quarterback for this team is, the fact that he can give them an explosive play on a 5-yard dump off because he's so freaking hard to tackle is incredibly valuable. The fact that he gives them another short yardage option to keep the chains moving instead of just A, exposing Anthony Richardson to getting hurt again, or B, just running it up the middle with Jonathan Taylor again. Like, we can take some hits off of JT and take some hits off of Anthony Richardson by just using Tyler Warren in short yardage. Again, same thing with the goal line. Like, he is the kind of, did you say his dad, or that he wore 44 because his dad's favorite player was John Riggins, right?
Yep. That's my favorite Tyler Warren anecdote is he wore 44 because his dad was a huge John Riggins fan. And John Riggins, if you're unfamiliar, was a running back for Washington who was an absolute hammer. His favorite thing to do was run over you and through you. And when you watch Tyler Warren play football, you think, yep, that tracks.
Yeah, no, he plays tight end as if John Riggins was a tight end. And I think that that's going to be so valuable for this team because he just gives them another option for bruising and battering the defense that takes hits off of their more valuable pieces, right? Well, I shouldn't say that Warren's not valuable. He is valuable. I'm just saying they can spread the pain a little bit here. He catches everything thrown his way. He's a true 3-level target. He can block a little bit. Like, I really, really love this pick. And by God, they were so desperate for quality tight end play. And I thought that they were going to get it with some of their past pieces that they added, and it just never happened. But if Tyler Warren fails, they're just never going to have a good tight end again, because I can't imagine him failing.
Feels like if Tyler Warren fails, it's the Colts' fault, not Tyler Warren's fault.
Yeah.
In round 2, pick 45, a player we both really like, JT Tuimoloau, the defensive end from Ohio State, the better of the two we both think that came out this year. Really good size, ability to stop the run, and the toughness to do so. Was local to me growing up, played his high school football around here, had a very good career at Ohio State. And I think Lou Anarumo is going to have a lot of fun with him, because if we're talking about Ohio State rushers that Lou Anarumo's worked with, I think JT is more capable than Sam Hubbard by far. So he's going to find some interesting ways to deploy him, because even though he has that very good size and toughness, he's got moves to him too. I wouldn't say he's necessarily bendy, but he is quick and he's good with his hands, so he can get around the edge. JT, very, very versatile player who I think is going to work his way into a starting position sooner rather than later. Round 3, pick number 80, Justin Wally, the cornerback from Minnesota. And this to me felt like a little bit of a fit for the old Colts defense, and I'm interested to see how he fits in Lou's defense.
For me, his fit is really more with like the fire zone stuff that Lou does than the man coverage stuff. Like I'm not super confident in his fluidity and explosiveness enough to make me think that he's going to be a consistent man corner for them on third down. I think the more likely option is that he's going to be like a CB. Well, no, I wouldn't even say CB3, because like if we consider Kenny Moore CB3, but Kenny Moore is more of just like a straight up nickel. So let's just say he is their third best, quote unquote, best outside corner, which means he's really only going to be on the field if everybody else is healthy in dime situations. And I think he's a better zone cover guy than a man cover guy, which really means he's not going to be on the field on third down for them if they play as much man coverage on third down as I think they will. All that to say, if you need a really fast but not necessarily really fluid zone cover corner, specifically for early down fire zones, boy, this is a very narrow cone for a third round corner to fit into. But if you need that kind of guy, I think it fits. But just don't have him covering receiver one-on-one 3rd and 7. How about that?
Well, they're going to find out whether or not he can in camp, that's for sure. They're going to find out what those limitations are. And yes, it is hand in glove for the early down stuff. The late down stuff, yeah, I think they'll probably rotate to other personnel packages. We move into day 3, round 4, number 127, a pick they got from the Rams. And it's Jalen Travis, the tackle you talked about out of Iowa State, who is a massive human being and extremely powerful. I'll let you talk about him, but I like this pick a lot. Whether or not he's a backup or eventually a starter, I think he's got the talent to be a starter. And again, if you're talking about a 3-tackle rotation where everybody has starter potential, you are better off than at least half the teams in the NFL.
I wanted him in Houston real bad. Because like as far as like explosive movers in that kind of frame, he is rare. Like one of the best athletic profiles that I've seen out of any tackle in the last few years. And that's saying a lot because we've had some freaks come out. But like he is so freaking big and his first step is so freaking explosive. Like he gets to his landmarks almost immediately. It reminds me a lot of a similarly sized and similarly explosive tackle in Jordan Mailata, who is one of the best in the NFL. Like he looks just like Jordan Mailata physically. And his tape was pretty damn good as well. Like this was not like a raw project. I have no idea why he went in the 4th round. I have zero idea. I thought he was going to be a day 2 pick. I thought he deserved to be a day 2 pick. Like if you're looking at everything that he brings to the table between size, athleticism, like even like advanced stats, like pressure percentage allowed on true dropbacks, he was way up there. I do not know why he was 127. So if somebody can explain that to me in the comments, I would love to hear it. Like, was there a medical thing I don't know about? Because he should not have been there, but he was. And I'd bet that he's going to be, similar to Bernhard Raimann, who they also got, I think it was day 2, right? I think they got him in the 2nd or 3rd round. He ended up being one of the better left tackles in the NFL early on in his career. I think Jalen Travis is also going to be a starter for them and a quality starter for them. and they just stole him at 127. It's insane.
Very strong start to day 3 for them, and they keep it up, in my opinion, in round 5, pick number 151. DJ Giddens, the running back out of Kansas State, who was one of my favorite backs in the middle of this very talented running class. And talking about a guy with 206 attempts that had 55 missed tackles forced, also had 25 explosive runs in that limited number of carries. One of the most difficult and dynamic backs to tackle in this entire class. Not the biggest guy, not the strongest guy in terms of running through you, but in terms of being hard to tackle, running away from you, and getting the most out of every carry. I thought DJ Giddens was a tremendous get down in round 5.
One of the more elusive backs in this class, and there's run through you guys and there's run around you guys, and he's more of a run around you guy than a run through you guy, but physically speaking, reminded me a lot of Joe Mixon. Like, for a bigger back to have that kind of fluidity in his lower half, to have the stop start ability, like it's very Joe Mixon-ish from that standpoint. And so if you're wondering, okay, if he's as talented as that, why did he go in the 5th round? There was some off the field stuff, not crazy off the field stuff. Like, there's a difference between criminal and maturity. It's really more on the maturity side than anything else. So he's not like a bad person. But there was enough stuff to push him to the 5th round, even with how talented he is. All things being equal, like if that part of the sheet was clean, he probably would have been a day 2 pick. I truly believe he would have been, because he's one of the most talented backs in this class, even over the guys that went really, really early. So I like the pick overall. I think he's in a good environment to succeed. I think he's behind a consummate pro in JT, who's also exceptionally talented in his own right. So he's going to learn how to be a successful NFL running back. And he's so damn talented that, knock on wood, if JT gets hurt, like, you could pop DJ in there and I think have some pretty good success.
Yeah, I think he easily could have been a round 3 pick based on talent alone. Now we look at the 2 round 6 picks. Number 189, Riley Leonard, the quarterback from Notre Dame. Because if you're going to lose a Sam Ehlinger and you can get another one, you absolutely have to do that.
Can't tell if that was a compliment or not.
I think it's more of a true statement,
right? Like, a quarterback that probably can't throw super well, but man, he could run the ball. He could really run the ball.
And he's super tough at doing it. GMs do have types. Ballard has continually taken chances on day 3 quarterbacks that have this profile. Riley Leonard is another one. And if, in all fairness, he's probably slightly more talented than Sam coming out. And Sam played very well as a Colt. This is not Sam Ehlinger's shade. It is a fact of Sam is what he is. And Riley right now is what he is, even if he might have slightly higher ceiling. But in round 6 at 189, a very worthwhile shot to take. The second pick in round 6, only one pick later, 190, a pick they got from the Falcons. Tim Smith, the defensive tackle out of Alabama, who is a run stopper that you get in round 6, and he's a good one. He's a solid one. He's going to be a rotational piece for them. I think he's going to be able to fill that role really well. I also don't expect him to do anything more than that developmentally. He's good at what he does. This is where you draft those guys. It's a skill set that gets you drafted in round 5 or round 6, and you oftentimes have a very long career in the NFL doing exactly that.
Yep. They hope that he's just going to learn from Grover and be another Grover. Like, that's the end goal there.
And in round 7, one of the more interesting players, I think, in this draft overall, not only because of the player himself, but also the fit in Lou Anarumo's defense. Round 7, number 232, the safety from Wisconsin, Hunter Wohler. And Hunter Wohler ended up on my radar because he had a tremendous physical profile. He tested very well in the second to last year at Wisconsin. And it's somebody that, although he's not overly fast, he's not slow. He ran a 4.57. This is a 6-foot guy that's 213 pounds. His vertical was 37 inches. His 3-cone was 6.72. And his 10-yard split was 1.6. So in terms of being explosive in the short area and a very good mover, Hunter Wohler is that guy. Now, did it always translate on the field? No, but he's got a lot of experience in a big conference. He's got great physical skills. That's the kind of guy you can start off as a special teamer, but I think there's more there with Hunter Wohler, and that makes him a sneaky 7th-round pick.
He's a 9.25 RAS, EJ. And we know that, if nothing else, Chris Ballard Like, it's kind of like, you must be this tall to ride. You must have this high of an RAS to be a Colt. 925 is his speed at safety. Looking at notable UDFAs here, Ulysses Bentley the fourth, the running back out of Mississippi. He is likely going to be a practice squad running back for them. I don't think he's going to crack the 53, but I think he will make the practice squad. And then Coleman Owen, the wide receiver out of Ohio. Of course, anytime an Ohio kid makes the NFL, we always got to shout them out. We see you, John, if you're watching this. Not a whole lot of other notable UDFAs here, at least that really stuck out to me. Did anything stick out to you?
Mostly Coleman Owen. I mentioned him in our gems issue and our wide receiver issue as well, in terms of a guy that I thought had a skill set that's going to fit an NFL team. He was incredibly productive out of the slot, and a lot of his wins looked like skills that you are going to need to translate to the pros. And he didn't get a lot of press because he went to Ohio, but some Ohio grads definitely shouted me out when they said, "Hey, thanks for mentioning Coleman. He's a great player. He'll probably make it." Again, didn't think he'd be drafted, but the kind of player that good organizations come along and scoop up in the UDFA process. Maybe he's only a practice squad player for them this year. Again, we've already talked about how talented their wide receiver room is. Maybe he cracks the 53 with a really good showing in camp in the preseason. Either way, it's an asset that they basically get for free that a lot of teams overlooked and either couldn't give him a good enough pitch, or he really liked whatever he saw in Indianapolis and said, that's the place I want to go to work with Shane Steichen or work with Reggie Wayne, and said that, hey, I get my shot. That's where I want to take it. But he's a very talented player.
So that brings us to our final segment, which is when we go through our three questions at the central pillar of this series. What was the identity before? What is the identity now? At least what they want their identity to be now. And what is the goal for the season? The identity before was a both predictable and disjointed defense. It was a quarterback situation that had a bunch of talent around him, but couldn't maximize it. And a coaching staff and front office that very clearly went into this offseason very nervous about that. What they want their identity to be now: a much more cohesive and also much more aggressive defense that can pull its weight a little bit more, and an offense that maybe isn't going to be as explosive through the air as some of the top ones in the NFL, but they will be very explosive on the ground, and I think competent enough in the air that they can still win some games here. And as for the goal for this season, this one I've actually been trying to figure out, and I'm still not 100%. It might be one of these teams where like the goal kind of evolves from month to month, because right now for me the goal is like it's just kind of like hope that Anthony Richardson gets better, but that's not even really a goal. It's more of just like a prayer, like hope that Anthony Richardson turns into a quarterback that justifies the resources that they spent to get him, because if he doesn't, then they've got much bigger problems, and at that point job security becomes an issue. But if either things go really poorly or really well, I think the goal then evolves from there, right? Like if things completely shit the bed and Daniel Jones is bad and Anthony Richardson is bad, all of a sudden the goal is look forward to 2026 and scout a whole bunch of quarterbacks that are coming out of college, right? And there's some pretty big names that are going to be coming out of college this year. Some of them that are also already connected to the franchise. But if one of them, or even both of them, takes a step forward and plays really well, all of a sudden the goal goes from we're looking at Arch Manning and Drew Aller tape by Halloween to we might be a wild card team. So I think this is one of the teams where the potential variance in outcomes is so high that I don't really have an established goal right now, and it's going to be a fluid thing from month to month. Right now, all I can really come up with is just hope that AR gets better and kind of go from there.
And there's one other option, which is human nature takes over. Nobody wants to lose their job. They think, heck, why not spend all the assets we have? Because if we get fired, we're not going to be here to spend them next year anyways. And they break into old habits and go veteran quarterback hunting late in camp. Could change the entire outlook for this team. You add a midline veteran starter with some accuracy. We talked about how all the other pieces are in place. The offensive line, the targets, the offensive system, the defense now with Lou Anarumo, who's going to be more supportive of this offense and hopefully hand them some extra possessions. If they added a veteran starter in the middle of camp, I think it would turn the Colts' expectations on their head.
Kenny Pickett, you are an Indianapolis Colt.
Maybe not Kenny Pickett, but there are a couple of other targets out there. I'm not saying it's likely, but again, the Colts, especially Chris Ballard, have done this in the past, not in camp. They've done it earlier in free agency, but it is a very well-worn trope at this point for the Colts to go about that. And as they get a look at Daniel Jones in camp and the pressure starts to ramp up of, what are we really looking at here? Are we looking at another 6 or 7 win team, which is neither here nor there in terms of developing the franchise overall? I could see them making a knee-jerk move and saying, we might as well push all the chips into the middle because we might not be at the table next year anyways.
Well, perhaps that's a nice little preview of what my bold prediction is going to be for the AFC South when we do our Friday patron-only episode, which, by the way, we do have bonus content every Friday over on the Patreon where we wrap up the division. We pick division winners. We pick division MVPs, offensive and defensive player of the year, coach of the year, rookies of the year for really the entire AFC South. So if you want even more bootleg content, come back tomorrow for the Texans episode and then head on over to the Patreon. Look at all of our shiny companion infographics that we have for every single team, showing all the data for every single team, and then stick around on Friday for the bonus episode. Again, one more public episode at least for the AFC South, and then next week we head to the NFC South, and then after that we do both East divisions, and then we're basically at the season at that point, folks. So hopefully you come back tomorrow for that, and until then,